Welcome back guys with another video, and today we're gonna analyzing Alfredo de la Cruz as requested in the first video. And in this video, of course, I'm just gonna analyze his harmony using FaceIQ Labs. And if you want a full facial report just like that with FaceIQ Labs, you can just click the link down below and you will have some facial measurements for free and also your side score for free. And this male model, this Hispanic male model, is pretty famous, so I won't speak that much about his career and history. And I just want to remind you before starting with the video, this flaw from the front. His low mandibular plane angle is probably his biggest flaw in his face. And this is mainly because a low mandibular plane angle in his face is creating a pretty high jaw frontal angle and also a short chin. And we can see this in a lot of faces because when your mandibular plane has this kind of angle from also the front point of view, your chin won't be that tall, while if your mandibular plane angle is on the higher end, your jaw frontal angle will be way more steep, but also your chin will be way more tall. And a good example of this is Ryan Gosling, who has pretty around 55 also to 30 mandibular plane angle, and in fact his jaw frontal angle is really low, but his chin is really long. So I kinda say that having a high mandibular plane angle is probably better than having a lower one, because it's way more masculine, okay, from this point of view. And another thing that I want to touch on before starting with the ratios is his low PFL from the outer corner of the eye. So he doesn't really have a low PFL because his medial canthus aren't that developed, but it's because his canthus and outer corner of the eye are pretty short and really close to the pupils, okay? And the final thing that I want you to take in mind is that he's a model, so it's pretty hard finding pictures where he's not squinting or frowning. And this is mainly because having a high canthal tilt, high A aspect ratio, high eyebrows tilt is making your A area way more aggressive and masculine and so striking. So this is probably the reason why almost every model is squinting in where they are taking pictures. And from this point of view, I wanna that you take in mind that his eyebrows tilt, canthal tilt, and A aspect ratio are way lower than that. Now let's start with the analysis. So the A aspect ratio, is too high. This is really a high A aspect ratio, and this is because he's squinting in this picture. I got his A aspect ratio around a 3.8 to 3.9, so around a tier 3 to tier 2 flaw, okay, as we can see from the bell curve. And I just wanna remind you that this is still due to his small eyes. He has a low PFL from the outer corner of the eye, but also his A height is pretty low. So he has kind of these small eyes, which is pretty attractive for male models and for males in general. And in fact, his next flaw is his one eye apart test. So as I said before, he has this low PFL from the outer corner of the eye, and you can't really see that because this is kind of like disguised from the eyelashes, okay? He has really long and dark and thick eyelashes, but they are downturned, so this is kind of hiding also his canthus. And I wanna just say that because if you have downturned eyelashes, so something like Alfredo or Timothy Chalamet, I think that curling them with a eyelash curler or with a perm also is way more better, because it's gonna like make your canthal tilt visually higher, because in this case his canthus looks about there, okay? while it's probably around there. So it's kind of hiding your real canthus and make it seem that it's lower. So just a note that you can take in mind. So his PFL from the outer corner should be higher, and his middle canthus, as we can see, are really downturned and high from this point of view. So if he had a longer eye from the outer corner, his one eye apart test will be way better. And we can confirm that his low PFL isn't due to his middle canthus being not really that developed, but because of his outer corner of the eye being too short and too close to the pupil. Just looking at his eye ipsilateral angle, sorry. And in fact, this is a pretty interesting ratio because even if his IPD is on the wider set end, he has a pretty eyes on the wider set and around 47%. And even if he has this trade, his ipsilateral angle is on the lower end. So his outer corner of the eye should be way more outside that. When you have around a 47% IPD and eye separating ratio, we wanna expect your ipsilateral angle being around 90 degrees, as we can see in some faces like Chico Lechowski. And we can say that his low ipsilateral angle is due to his long nose, because he doesn't really have a long nose at all. And this ratio, the deviation is pretty high, also because his jaw frontal angle, as I said before, is on the higher end. And this is due, of course, to his mandibular plane angle being a bit too flat, even if his chin is really wide and square. So generally, when you have this wide and square chin, your mandibular plane are gonna be way lower, as we can see in some faces like Shanoprai. But in this case, this isn't really enough, okay, for saving his jaw frontal angle, because of course his chin is short due to his low mandibular plane angle. The next flaw is his bitemporal width. This is a bit on the lower end, and this is probably a tier 4 to tier 3 flaw, as we can see from there. Just take in mind that this can be better. And of course, when you have a short chin, your total facial width to height ratio is gonna be a bit low. And in fact, this isn't really that huge, because his chin should be like 4 millimeters taller, in my opinion, so not really too crazy. But of course, when you have this flaw, your total facial width to height ratio will be a bit low. And even if his forehead, as we can see from there, is on the higher end, so he has a bit of a tall forehead, not really that much, but as we can see from there, it's a bit too tall. Even if he has these features, his total facial width to height ratio is pretty low. So we can kinda confirm 100% that his chin should be way taller than that. And in fact, when you have this short chin, also your lower third height will be pretty short, okay? And this is a pretty rare flaw, because all the males in general has their lower third around 35 to 36%. We can also see like 38% in some faces like Shanoprai, and this isn't really that dimorphic at all. This is a really feminine feature. Then, as I said before, his jaw frontal angle is high, not really that much, but it's on the higher end because his mandibular plane is pretty flat from the side profile. Then his middle third is on the lower end, so he kinda has this short skull, if you wanna say that, and we can kinda confirm that his ipsilateral angle is on the lower end, not because his nose is too high, because his nose isn't really high at all, as we can see from there, from this ratio. So we can kind of confirm that his PFL from the outer corner of the eye should be way more higher than that. And of course he has a wide jaw. Sorry, he has a pretty wide jaw, and this is really attractive. His ramus is really longer, and his gonions are also pretty outwards, so nothing to say here. Then his lower to proportion are on the lower end, as we can see from this ratio. So this lower to proportion and his full upper lip are making his philtrum way lower. So if he had around a 33 to 34% lower to proportion, his chin will be and will look way more shorter, and probably he must say that his philtrum will be higher than his chin, if of course his upper lip will be thin and his lower to proportion will be on the higher end. And the lower third proportion is just measuring where the mouth is set on the lower third. Then, as I said before, his eye separating ratio is ideal, and we can kind of see that this is on the higher end of ideal. We kind of see for males good eye separating ratio around 45 to 46% for being that dimorphic. This isn't really that dimorphic, but it's still ideal, nothing to say. His mouth nose ratio is really good. His nose has a good width, and also his mouth is pretty wide too, so this is perfect. Also, his FWHR is ideal because his middle third is pretty good, and also his facial width is good too. So we can kind of confirm from this point of view that his short total face shape isn't due to his facial width being that high, because if his facial width was way higher, we will kind of see this ratio around 2.5, sorry, 2.05, 2.1, something like Jordan Barrett. And yeah, this is really good FWHR, and when you have a good also middle third height and a good facial width, of course you can't really say anything about that. And as I said before, his full upper lip and lower third proportion are kind of saving his chin to philtrum ratio, which is still on the lower end of ideal. This isn't masculine at all, but it's still ideal from this point of view. And from this point of view, we can kind of see that if he had like a 5 mm taller chin or around there, his chin to philtrum will be way more masculine on the higher end. His total face shape will be ideal, and also his lower third proportion will be a bit more masculine. Everything will be better. His mid to face ratio is ideal. Of course, when you have a good IPD and mid face height, you can't really don't pass that. His canthal tilt is lower than that, okay, he's squinting there, but this is still ideal, okay, this is a good canthal tilt. Also because his medial canthus are pretty downturned and long. Then his ipsilateral alar angle is ideal on the lower end, as we can see from there, of course because his outer corner of the eye, as I said before, should be a bit more outwards. He has a full upper and lower lip, so now nothing to say here, this ratio is probably perfect. His eyebrow sightiness is ideal and dimorphic. His eyebrow tilt is perfect, it's probably lower than that, but this A area is pretty perfect. If you don't look at the PFL and the one eye upper test, probably from the point of view of MISC, this A area is probably a 9 plus or even a 9.5. We can see that the eye color is brutally beautiful. I mean, look at this contrast between this dark blue and light green. This is really huge, and also the contrast from this eye color and limbal ring and the black eyelashes and the black eyebrows. This is probably the perfect contrast that we want to see in a male. Also his hooding is perfect, and his lower eye, so his dark circles are perfect, and he has no eye bags without squinting, of course. His neck width is ideal, nothing to say. His cheekbones are fairly high set, perfect. His nose width is ideal. And from this ratio, when you have a good mouth to nose ratio, we can see that your nose is ideally wide, and we can see also that the intercanthal is so this distance right there is called the intercanthal distance, is pretty good. So we can kind of confirm another time that his bad one eye apart test is due to his low length of the eye from the outer corner part, and not his intercanthal distance being too high because of his underdeveloped medial canthus. Okay, and generally when you have well developed medial canthus, the intercanthal distance will be ideal. Okay, then we have the interpupillary to mouth width ratio, and from this ratio right there we can just say that his mouth is fairly harmonizing with his IPD. So of course when you have a good IPD and mouth width, this will be ideal. His ears aren't that protrusive, so he doesn't really have flared ears, but neither really short and small ears. Perfect. Also his ear protrusion ratio is indicating that too, and his mouth corner position are ideal, nothing to say here. And his nose tip position is ideal too, so nothing to say here. He doesn't really have that piggy nose or too droopy nose. Perfect. So this is everything from the front. Now let's move to the side. From the side ratio, the first thing that we can see is his enormous glabella. So this bone is really big, and because that his brow ridge inclination is really high, and this is like a Neanderthal ratio. Okay, and this is mainly because not because his brow ridge is too prominent, because we can say that his brow ridge is pretty flat. I mean, his brow ridge could be a bit more forward and projected, but this is mainly because his frontal bone, brow ridge and glabella are really enormous and strong, and this is really damn good dimorphism. This is a really good dimorphic trait. Okay. Other things that I want you to take in mind is that his ramus is really long from the side profile, and that his entire nose structure is pretty upturned. Okay. So as I said before, his nose base and entire nose structure is upturned, so his nose tip rotation angle from the base is upturned relatively to the front full plane, and this is pretty feminine. Okay, we have these ratios right there because the nasolabial angle isn't enough for measuring the upturn how much upturned your nose is, because we can say that your lips can be really prominent, or also this part, so the lower nasal part, can be really projected or not, and all this stuff, so the lips projection and the lower nasal projection are influencing your nasolabial angle, so this isn't enough. And as I said before, his all nose structure is upturned, and in fact also his nose tip is pretty upturned relatively to the Frankfurt plane, as we can see from the bell curve and from this ratio. Okay? So talking about his lip and chin assessments, we can say that his chin should be a bit more forward, like 2 millimeters forward, more forward, like for having better convexities, but also his lips should protrude a bit more. Okay, so he's gonna fail a lot of lips assessment because his lips aren't protrusive, and we can see there is trade in faces like Matt Boomer or Harry Cavill, where lips aren't that protrusive from the side. We don't want lips that are too protrusive, so fisherman lips, but neither really too inward lips. And this is the lips assessment are things that are pretty hard to pass, because we need a perfect chin projection and also perfect lips projection, but also a perfect nose assessment for passing all that. So this area is pretty important for your face, but also pretty hard to pass, also for really attractive faces like Henry Cavill. Also, his nose height to width ratio is shorter, and this isn't mainly because his nose height is too short, but because from the front his nose height looks ideal and perfect, but this is mainly because his nose tip and projection are pretty high, so his nose is just really projected, and so his ratio is about a 1:1, and this is pretty feminine. Okay, this is another lips assessment that he fails because his lips should be a bit more protrusive, and again, if his lower lip will be like a 1.5 millimeter more projected, his ratio will be ideal at 0 millimeters. Okay, this is another lip assessment that he fails. Again, if fails all the lips assessment, not that much, probably around a 1.5 millimeters for each upper and lower lip. As we can see from there, if his upper lip and lower lip were like 1.5 millimeter more protrusive, this ratio will be ideal on the lower end, but ideal. Sorry, on the higher end, but ideal. This is another ratio that he kind of fails because again his upper lip should be a bit more forward. This is another ratio. This is another lip assessment that he fails, again because his lower lip should be a bit more protrusive. And this is a ratio that he fails a bit, not that much. This is probably a tier 2 flaw because his nose has a bump. So where your nose has that bump right there, so this kind of curve and Roman nose, your nasal projection is probably gonna be a bit higher, because we can see that if his nose were completely straight, this line will be more lower and completely following the nasal structure from this point of view, and so his nasal projection will be a lot lower. Okay, this is a convexity that he fails, not because his ratex isn't projected, because he has a pretty projected glabella and pretty projected ratex, but because his chin should be a bit more forward, a bit, as I said before, like 1 to 2 millimeters, and so his chin being a bit recessed, like from 1 to 2 millimeters, are like making his lips assessment better. So I think that his chin should be like 1 to 2 millimeters more forward, and his lips like 3 millimeters, 2 millimeters more forward. Not that much. Okay, these are still pretty like tier 2 flaws and tier 3 flaws. Then his mandibular plane angle, as I said from the front, is his hugest flaw, and this is the reason why his jaw frontal angle is pretty high, and also because his chin is pretty short. We are all talking about tier 2 flaws, okay? This isn't really a low or too low mandibular plane angle, but this is the reason why his front harmony isn't around a 95%, okay? Then of course this is this is the, let me find, okay, this is the total facial convexity, and this is again on the lower end of ideal. This isn't really near ideal, or at least this isn't ideal from 1 degree or 1.5 degree, and this is mainly because his glabella should be like 3 to 4 degrees more forward in my opinion, and also his chin should be like 2 millimeters more forward for having the perfect ratio around 145. His nose tip is on the higher end because, as I said before, his entire nose structure is pretty upturned. This is another lip assessment that he fails, not that much, but you know, if his upper lip will be a bit more projected, this will be ideal. The nasal mental angle is on the higher end. This is still pretty decent, 9.63 out of 10, so we can't really say that much about this. So this indicates that his mandible should be like 1 to 2 millimeters more forward and not his chin bone. I mean, you can also have this really projected and not. This is also influenced by the soft tissues. So this ratio is still important, but this isn't really all bone. This is another ratio that he doesn't pass. They're not that much, but you know, if his upper and lower lip will be more projected, this will be ideal. Then we have the nasal facial angle. The nasal facial angle is on the higher end, and we can confirm that with that his nose should be a bit more lower set, talking about the bump. So the bump is making his nasal projection a bit higher from this point of view, but also we can say also that his chin should be a bit more forward, as I said before, for having the ideal and masculine end. So he's, even if his glabella is pretty enormous, it isn't really that projected. This is still ideal, but you know, this isn't really that masculine, but this is still perfect for a male. Then we have the nasolabial angle. So even, as I said in before, even if his nose is really upturned, as we can see from this line, this is going straight to hell. This line, sorry, straight to sky. This line, okay. This part of the nose, so the nasal base, is pretty projected. So, and also his lips are still decently projected around the tier 2, okay, projection. So this is kind of making his nasal angle on the higher end, but still ideal. And if his part wasn't that projected, as we can see in a lot of faces, and on the average you don't really have this feature, his nasal angle will be probably around 130 degrees, and yeah, this is another convexity that he passes, but not that much, mainly because his chin should be a bit more forward and his glabella should be a bit more forward, and also having this part of the nose really that projected is making a lot of his convexities, as this one, a bit lower, okay? Because if this point was around there, his convexity will be a lot better, okay? Pretty logic, I say. Same for this one, okay? Is ideal on the lower end because of his projected lower nasal base and chin that should be a bit more forward. His gonial angle is ideal and masculine. Of course, when you have that long ramus and low mandibular plane angle, your gonial angle will be ideal. His ramus is really that damn good, and this is probably why his mandibular plane is on the lower end. But you know, this is still pretty good and dimorphic. This is extremely dimorphic, okay? Then we can say that in this picture he's tilting his head up really badly, and you know, this is like the only picture that I found for him, so apologize for that. But as you probably already know, his submental is ideal, and I tried to map this better as I could, but you know, when you have this kind of projection and strong submental, it's pretty hard for you having a saggy submental, okay? And also I've seen a lot of edits and videos about him, so I can say that and I can confirm that his submental cervical angle is ideal. The gonions, of course, this is a really long ramus, are perfectly below his mouth. This is perfect. And his chin projection is still ideal, okay? He isn't that recessed, and he isn't recessed at all, but you know, having like 2 millimeters more will be perfect. So also his orbital vector is ideal because his maxilla is really well projected, and this is probably also why his front profile harmony is really good. And of course, when you have this good projected maxilla and pretty horizontally grown profile, your facial depth ratio will be ideal. And this is everything for him, so we can just say that the biggest flaw for him is the nose. That should be a bit more downturned and shouldn't have the bump. But also from the side, his mandibular plane is probably his biggest flaw, that is making his jaw frontal angle on the higher end and his chin short. And from the front, we can also see the PFL is probably another flaw that he should fix. So a rhinoplasty will be pretty worth for him, but just take in mind that if he lowered this part of the face, okay, probably also his nasal frontal angle will be a bit higher and won't really be that ideal. So with harmony, we have to take in mind all these things, okay, because if his nose structure around there will be probably here, also his nasal frontal angle won't be ideal, okay. So we have to take in mind all these things, but I still think that a rhinoplasty for him will be the best. And yeah, let's see, there are the key strengths, okay, the jaw width is pretty ideal, the ramus is probably his best feature, and the nose from the front is still pretty good in terms of width and height. And yeah, we can still say that his small eyes is probably his biggest flaw from the front, and from the side the overprojected nose and the deviation from the front, okay. This is everything from this video. This is still probably around 83% facial harmony overall, where he isn't squinting. So take in mind that probably he's a mid-chad or around there overall, also considering his harmony, feature, misc, and angularity. So this is everything from this video. We're gonna see each other in the next video. Let me know in the comments who do you want me to rate next. Peace.